He goes, here! Uh-oh, it's time to go, boys. Let's rock. I'm sorry.
All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the council committee meeting, November 21st, 2017. First item on the agenda is under police regarding coyotes. Mrs. Pitts, are you ready to talk about this?
So a resident, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, a resident over in Mesa on the east side, his backyard faces some farmland that backs up against Doe Run Estates. So he has 3 small dogs. His larger of the 3 was attacked by a coyote at night, and they had to take him to the hospital, and he had to spend the night. He had like 6 stitches and multiple bites and stuff. So they also, a couple nights later, heard some screaming, some animal screaming or whatever, and they could hear the coyotes howling. So they're just concerned on what can be done about it. And so we're just here to discuss it tonight. If people have ideas, Matt Kramer sent a few things around to read. I looked up a few things too. So just going to open it up for discussion.
I thought the thing that Matt sent out was really great.
It was.
I mean, it's basically how to deal with them and avoid them. And that's probably the number one thing, is educating people on what to do.
I had a story last night about Florence and the airport, a lot of bobcats,
Saw that.
big.
Yeah,
That one going up there
Climbing up the tree was kind of scary, wasn't it?
looked like a cougar. Mm-hmm. I swear it's him. Oh, wow. Oh, whoa.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we definitely, like back in Lakemont, when you're going back towards the lake, there's a coyote den that is right at the end of my street. So this is an issue that's dealt with quite often. We hear them howling almost every night.
Wow.
And we'll hear them killing other animals. And occasionally, one of our neighbors will go on her run and she'll see one dead on the side of the street.
Coyote?
A coyote, whether or not, we don't know how they're dying, or if somebody's taking it upon themselves to kill it, I don't know. But we have run into that. So this is helpful information.
Call the zoo, see if they got ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I think
There's
it comes down to kind of two main options, you know, and maybe both could be done. Is between education is one thing, making sure people aren't putting food out for them or attracting them to their yards in any way. And then the other option would be, you know, hiring a company to hunt them, you know, essentially. Get rid of them.
there's
Question. I don't know anything about coyotes, but is this like their mating season, or is this when they're trying to find a hole for the winter, or what?
I don't think they hibernate.
mating season's in February. Right now is when the young ones are starting to go out on their own and get their own territories. That's why fall, they start showing up again.
Probably make sure all the garbage cans are well contained would be a big start.
There is I did some research and looked up some ideas. Obviously use fencing. If you see them make a lot of sound, they don't want confrontation. It says never look at them in the eyes for some reason. I guess they feel that's
Threatening.
some people have sprayed them with a hose. Make sure that one of the things they're attracted to is bird feed. So if you have bird food in your backyard, that attracts them because it attracts squirrels, which attracts them. And so the food chain. Some reading, just if you have small dogs, go out with them at night, have all the lights on in the back, make noise. One thing I also read was, and I don't know if this is something you could order online, but they say one thing they don't like, the two smells they don't like is wolf urine and mothballs.
Well, I don't have any wolf urine around the house.
It's an idea.
Probably goes down Home Depot.
And, and then there's one place I looked up, if there's, I guess if it's a big problem, there's a place in Independence called Expel Wildlife Solutions, and they actually deal with coyotes and basically it says here, any animals at all they deal with, so I could always forward that number to them along with the advice. You know, I don't know, whatever you guys think.
I think we should, I mean, I don't know if anybody would agree, but the piece that Matt had sent out, I think would be good to put on our website.
Yeah,
That was good information.
definitely.
That came from Kentucky Fish and Wildlife?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did they have on
Yeah, go
there
ahead.
about the lighting? Because I was like Corinne, I was curious, and I don't know if it was Matt's email or if I read it someplace else, that lighting, they don't like light places. So like if you would put in motion detector lights, that could help too. Because as soon as that light comes on, they'll shrink back. They won't go in the yard.
Good, okay.
Just a suggestion.
We live over on the east side and have woods in our backyard, and we don't have any issues with coyotes because we do have a motion light. So that might help. And we have dogs, but they're bigger. They're not going to bother our dogs.
So, Corinne, did they see the dog attacked by the coyote, or are they sure it was a coyote, not one of those, our little feral dogs that get around?
I don't know.
Okay. Any other thoughts or action?
I think with as many home remedies as we have, I don't think Public Works or I don't think we need to take any drastic measures. If we can get the word out that these are simple fixes.
And the thing that really hit me that Matt sent out was if you try to eliminate them by killing them, then it actually will increase the population because new ones will come in to take the territory. So that I thought was really interesting.
So we probably shouldn't practice the night vision SWAT stuff?
New ones will move in.
Do you guys get calls much on them? No?
Okay. All right, Joe, is that something that do you think we can get that on the website? Okay. All right, if there's no other thoughts or ideas on that, we'll move on to the next item, the social worker position presentation. Mrs. Fetty? Hey, we have it.
All right. Sorry. All right, so we're going to talk about the police. The title is actually a Police Social Services Coordinator. That's what Erlanger is going to call this title. It'll be referred to as a police social worker or police social work within the documentation. Go ahead and start. If you hit F11, it'll go into full screen. Okay, so what we'll do is talk a little bit about what police social work is. I think a couple of you have heard a little bit about the program. We're going to go into a little more depth of what exactly this person would do for the city, what benefits we're going to see with public service and the community and the individual client that it assists. And then we'll talk about the partnerships that we have formed with NKU and Alexandria. So what is police social work? A highly specialized field of clinical social work. Police social worker acts as a city liaison between the public service departments, within the city and the citizens. So basically, they're bridging a gap between a citizen that is in need of any type of resource and the resources that are available within the community. They deal with quite a few different cases. I'll briefly go over these. Mental health situations, they do assessments, recommendations, referrals. They make sure that they can facilitate into emergency hospitalizations, getting the people to the right place at the right time, professional consultation for police assistance, senior citizen evaluation, trauma debriefing for victims and witnesses of disaster or crimes, assessment for referral services for individuals with substance abuse problem, and education, case management, and counseling services. Victims of violent crimes, so domestic violence, including batteries, assault, child abuse, elder abuse. They're going to make sure that any individual that's within that family that has gone through a traumatic experience, a violent crime, we're going to be able to assist them and get them to the right resources that are going to help them. Juvenile cases, situations like curfew violations, possession of alcohol, runaways, leading all the way up to criminal offenses, theft, vandalism, battery, fire setting. So it's crisis intervention, making sure that that child is getting the evaluation that they need, and helping the child as well as the parents walk through the justice system, being an advocate when they're sitting at court. And just being that liaison between the family and all the public services that are available to them. Domestic disputes, crisis intervention, family assessments, counseling, and referral services. Services for physically, mentally, developmentally disabled individuals and senior citizens. So, for example, going in and assessing the need of a senior citizen, maybe they don't have the ability to get they can't take care of themselves. So understanding their issues holistically and getting them into either a facility or getting them at home care, just making sure that they're being taken care of properly. Traumatic incidents and deaths. So suicides, fires, hostage situations. The police social work also handles death notifications. So going to the families and talking to them about these difficult situations and understanding how to interact with them and best support their needs. Also assisting with management on the scene of a crime with the police and assisting with what the police have also seen and what they've gone through. Indigent populations, so doing financial screenings. So going into a home, for example, you might have a codes enforcement violation, and you never know what's behind the doors. So understanding, okay, we're starting with not cutting the grass over and over again. But the moment you walk into that door, you're noticing other situations that are happening. Maybe there's not enough food on the table. Maybe there's childcare, child abuse, or whatever the situation might be. Understanding the picture holistically and bridging that gap with the community resources. This person would be an expert on all the different resources that are available. St. Vincent de Paul, Food Pantry, Salvation Army, crisis intervention, and understanding needs and causes for financial problems and getting them into budget counseling and education on their financial management. Okay, what to expect from a police social work program. So overall, once we started researching this, we're finding this is a win-win for everybody that's involved. This is not just the person that we're going to be interacting with, the client, as you'll see them referred to. This is a bigger picture. This is assisting our police and our fire and our codes enforcement officers. This is for our community to help with blight and raising our property values by assisting and building up our citizens. I'll briefly go over these. Police officers, fire and EMS, and codes enforcement officers, they receive hours of training for crisis intervention, mental health, but their exposure is so limited. It's that time that they're on the scene. the nature of the response is, the response capabilities creates a hole in the system. So a public social work program tries to fill that hole and not only assists in the issue at hand, but also tries to prevent future issues and future calls. Benefits for clients. I won't read through every one of them because there's a tremendous amount of benefits for all the clients that are involved. I mean, juveniles, understanding the juvenile court system and trying to get out of that. The mental health treatment and getting them into the right facilities, substance abuse, making sure we have the connections between transitions and St. Elizabeth and some behavioral health to get them the right help they need. Issues with child neglect and abuse and children who witness domestic violence, understanding the resources that are available for these children. Working with the school also. This person would play a big role in the school system and making sure that they're interacting with the teachers, the superintendent, and understanding what that child needs to be successful. Increased services for elderly with basic services such as food and shelter, and understanding what their needs moving forward would be. And then benefits for the community. Overall, the benefits for the community would be a decrease in repeat calls. So what we see is the fire department and the police department going back to the same house, even codes enforcement, they're going back to the same house over and over and over again. What we can do is, if we look at the picture holistically and understand, okay, yes, we have a cutting the grass situation, or we have a domestic abuse situation. We're dealing with that instance right then and there. But we need that follow-up to get them to not have to have that situation again. And really, I mean, this is a support system for our public service, our public employees. Sharpen focus and increased agency services. So understanding, all the different resources that are available. Maybe we're using fire and police for the same person. It's a waste of resources. So if we have this police social work program, the two resources that are being used can be freed up to do other things. So I'll go ahead and I'll turn it over to Rhonda, and she's going to talk about some of the issues that she's seen and examples of how this person would help.
Some of the issues we've seen on the EMS side, I received not a complaint, but I was requested to follow up with a resident on Madison Pike because they were calling repeatedly because she needed assistance in and out of her house, lifting assistance, and they had been there multiple times. So I went down and did a home visit, and this woman, she's in her mid-40s. She is a recent amputee from diabetes, and she was just struggling with getting in and out of her car and getting to doctor's appointments. No one could help her, so that's why she was calling. And I said, well, how can we help you? And she said, I need a ramp. And I'm like, wow, okay, well, I will see what I can do. I'm obviously not skilled to build a ramp, but I went out and I was able to get lumber donated for the ramp that she told me that her friend would build. I got the lumber donated, the friend disappeared. So I've been working on trying to get this ramp built for her. The Boy Scouts are, they're supposed to build the ramp sometime soon. They have the building permit. They actually went down and installed a new door for the area that the ramp's going to be built, but we're still struggling to get that ramp built. It's going to be built sometime November, December in the freezing cold. What I think the social worker could have done, she knows a lot more resources than I do, and I think that we could have had this with the help of a social worker. We could have had this done immediately. This has been going on since July. So, and this poor woman, right now, she's living with her sister because I guess her case manager is not allowing her to go back home until the ramp's built. So that's one thing, I see a social worker providing necessary resources that can get the job done for somebody a lot quicker than I can. Another issue we've seen, we had a resident that's just living in a deplorable situation with someone taking advantage of her. She can't take care of herself. She went into the hospital. We had been there repeatedly. The last emergency that we went to was for difficulty breathing. I was immediately notified that it was the worst run this paramedic has ever been on, and he works in Newport. So I worked for days. I visited the hospital for days and trying to tell them of the situation at home. I contacted the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, and they went out and visited. She ended up going back home. I was very disappointed, but she did not want to go in a nursing home, and I don't think that she was capable of truly making that decision on her own, but they allowed her to go back in. I think, with dealing with the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, they are so overwhelmed. They do that initial visit, but following up with things is very slow, and I don't think people are getting the care that they need. So I think, with having the police social worker, it's just going to be an amazing benefit for everyone, the police, Public Works, Codes Enforcement, and Fire EMS. I think it'll be an awesome addition to our city. Very needed and necessary.
Ms. Fetty's PowerPoint went over quite a few things here that I can just reiterate. The mental health issues, we deal with a lot of calls with the police department. The majority of the people that call the city for anything are usually in contact with the dispatch center. I think Chief Ward from Alexandria is here tonight, and he'll reiterate this if you want him to come up here and talk, but I think 80%, he had estimate 80% of the calls that we get in the police department are non-criminal in nature. A wide range of all sorts of things, where the little Johnny won't go to school. I need him to go to school. I need you to come over here. I need you to be his parent, because I can't be a parent. These are parenting skills. These are non-criminal. These are not police jobs. These are parenting skills. We go to the mental health part of it. It's failure to take their medicine or not the right meds. They're self-medicating, whether they're mixing with alcohol or drugs or other, marijuana. Or maybe they're just undiagnosed, and we deal a lot with that. We go over these bipolar or schizophrenics or things like that, and we can only deal with it while we're there because this radio here controls everything that we do. We go in there 5 or 10 minutes, and then we get another radio call that we have to go on, so where there's no follow-up. With this police social worker, we can turn that information over to the police social worker, and hopefully that person, whoever that individual is, can go back in and try to help determine what the underlying causes are of what's going on. Again, the police social worker, where we had come up with this, the majority of these police social workers are inside the police department. Now, they have city social workers as well, but again, with 80% of the calls or whatever the calls are that are coming in the police department, most of them are filtered through us in the first place. So with the fire department, they can come over and talk to the social worker here and explain what it is that the problem is. Same thing with city codes or anything else. They can refer those individuals to this police social worker inside the police department. There's some benefits there where we can allow that person that's a social worker to be inside the police department and have access to confidential information because we will vet those individuals through the DOCJT police officer standards, all except for sending them to the police academy and sending them through the physical training. But we'll have the background and the polygraph and some other stuff, and they'll have constant contact with us. Anyways, there's some other things. One of the big things that I saw, we do a lot of child abuse type cases. Whether you believe it or not, there's a lot of sexual assaults that involve children 5 and 6 years old sexual assaults on 2- and 3-year-old children. Well, those aren't criminal. Now, there's a criminal act behind that at some point in time. Where did this 6 or 7 or 8-year-old, whatever it was, learn how to sexually assault a 2 or 3-year-old? You know, we've always talked about playing doctor, but there's something different about playing doctor when you're sexually assaulting. So that older child more than likely learned that someplace else. So when they get these, when this social worker gets that information, they can look at that and they can, if that child doesn't disclose in a forensics interview, that social worker can get that information back because there isn't any criminal acts that can be dealt with. The social worker can come back in and try to see if there's anything that they can figure out as far as, is there an underlying issue here? So it's the follow-up. And if there's the CAC, and that's the Child's Advocacy Center, that's who does our interviews, forensics interviews of these children, they can make recommendations to these parents of where to go get help. Well, again, some of these people just don't understand what's going on and where to get this help at. With this social worker, maybe that social worker could take that child and that parent and try to lead them as best they can to that resource to try to get this child some help, or the family to get some help, or there might be something else that they might be able to find out. But it's about the follow-up that we can't do, which the cabinet, when we talk about the cabinet, it's the Cabinet for Families and Children, that's who's responsible for this information, or responsible for these investigations. And hopefully this person can go in there, the social worker can go in there and try to do some of this follow-up and learn what the underlying problems are. Much like what Ms. Fetty's talking about with the person that can't fix their house. Is it because they don't know how to budget or things like that? But it's all about networking, and the networking doesn't stop right here in the city. It branches out, and as Ms. Kyle and Ms. Skidmore know, you know, with the Kenton County Alliance. There's all sorts of resources out there. There's lots of groups out there with lots of resources and things that they can do to help the community. But nobody really knows every little piece. With this police resource officer or police social worker, they should have a good grasp of all the resources that are out there that are available to these people and be able to put those pieces together and assist these individuals. I could go on, I shouldn't, but like I said, Chief Ward of the Alexandria Police Department is here tonight. He's the one that started in Kentucky. He's the only one that has a police social worker in Kentucky. He actually brought Kelly Pompilio, which is their police social worker, here with us tonight. And they'll be more than happy to address any questions. If you have any questions for us that we can specifically answer, either I or Ms. Wolf or Ms. Fetty, or you can ask Chief Ward, who's got firsthand, and Kelly, who are firsthand experience on what this program is all about, that anything we haven't explained. Yes, sir.
I'd like to ask, thanks for coming. What's the percentage of people that don't let the social worker into their home?
0.
So everybody you go see,
So far,
they let you in?
So far, I was hired in July of last year, I was 16, and I've not had one person shut the door in my face. It's different because I can go in and say I'm not with the cabinet, so I'm not here.
I'm sorry to stop you. If you wouldn't mind, could you come up to the mic just so we can have it on the recording?
So I started in July 2016, and at this point, I've not had anyone turn me away or say they did not want my service. A big thing that I'm able to do is I'm able to go in and say, I'm not with the cabinet, so I'm not here to remove your children as the perception is with the cabinet. And I'm not a police officer where I'm not here to arrest you. I don't carry a gun. I don't have those authorities. I'm simply here to help you. Let's figure out what's going on, what you need, and let me link you up to that resource. So I've had a couple say, I'll get with you if I need something, but for the most part, not one person has ever said no.
Are you a social worker?
Yeah, I actually have a bachelor's and a master's in social work. I worked at the cabinet for 12 years. I went all through intake, investigations, ongoing, became supervisor of the child fatality team, so I have a wide range of experience when it comes to social work.
Are you full-time or part-time?
Full-time.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for coming.
You might as well stay up there.
I told her I wouldn't throw her under the bus, so
Oh, no,
that's okay. She's getting used to it.
I have two questions. Sorry.
Go ahead.
First, thank you for what you do, because that is one of the toughest jobs there is out there.
You're welcome.
And how do you find the time? I mean, are you able to do this in a 40-hour week? It just sounds so overwhelming.
So initially, Alexandria is like a little over 9,000, and when he said I was going to be the coordinator position, so in case we was to hire more social workers, I could supervise them, I'm like, oh, Alexandria won't need that, you know, I can handle it all, but I'm finding, yes, it's definitely out of my 40-hour work week, and I'm getting some overtime with it, but something I've been able to do is I work with Northern Kentucky University, and we have bachelor level students and master level students that I'm able to supervise, and so they're doing their practicum work with me.
That's awesome.
So currently I have 2 students who each give me 20 hours a week, and so that's kind of free labor, but my master's students are able to do a lot more than the bachelor's level, but what's nice is because I'm a master's level social worker, I can supervise that type of environment. So we do have a contract with NKU, which I know they have already formed that partnership as well, if the position is granted, so.
And that's great experience for them, too.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, because they see it's a very holistic assessment. You know, I'm dealing with mental health, substance abuse, domestic violence, crisis intervention. I mean, there's just a wide range of.
Yeah, and may I add to that, what is critical for me as chief is there are so many times, and I've been, when I got out of the military and I started policing in Kentucky in 1983, and I spent 16 years in Crescent Springs, so I'm familiar with this area. And I did get my visa stamped when I came across the river. So Chief Knopf from Taylor Mills said I could come. I think this position has got to be, in my career, the most effective within our agency that I have ever seen. Because I commonly said there's used to be 2 things guaranteed in life. You had to pay taxes and then we died. But I think there's a third one in that when you dial 911 in this country, I don't care, at some point, it might take us a while, but a police officer is going to show up at your front door. We're going to be there. And we have a wide range of skill sets, but I'm not wired to be a social worker. I'm not wired to be a fireman or a medic. I don't like medicine. Needles scare the heck out of me, and fires do too, but a 12 gauge doesn't bother me. So some would say, boy, I'm wired wrong. But we each have our own niches and our own professions. And community policing, over the decades that we've tried to perfect it, has tried to make social workers out of cops. And it hasn't worked. So the next best thing was to bring social work within the PD. Because as chief, I can now eliminate the communication barriers between what Kelly does and what our officers on the street do. And in the year and a half that it has grown, and I have to say, it's not me that's done it because I'm not a social worker. And I told Kelly that, you're going to have to grow this position because I don't know exactly what it is. I know what I want you to do. I see a vision, but I don't know exactly how to get there. But right now, the officers call her, the paramedics call her, and as a true full-service public agency, our city is helping people solve problems, because what she has taught me is that people in crisis, makes no difference what their education level is, nor their economic status. When you are in crisis and you're emotionally involved, you have a very difficult time of advocating for yourself or your family. And that's where she comes in. And so things that don't rise to the level of immediacy for the cabinet because they are so overwhelmed, like Sergeant Rice said, we're able to step in as a city and help our citizens get through a problem And when we do, it reduces our overall calls for service back to that same residence, which is a huge cost savings, because to roll that police car and take up the time, or to roll a fire truck and a life squad, is costly. So she actually is, although there is an added expense with her position and salary, I think overall to the community, the wealth of support and help that she has brought to it has been invaluable. That helps, so.
Helps a lot, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm having trouble distinguishing what you all do in your position and what the cabinet does itself, because, I mean, they've got a lot of social workers as well. I mean, is it your goal, do you work with the cabinet? You're trying to keep cases from getting to the cabinet? I'm not sure what you do here.
So it all depends. Like, the example he gave with the child on child, the cabinet don't accept those reports because it's child on child, even though the 6-year-old or 7-year-old who was the perpetrator on the other child probably has something traumatic in their life that, so, you know, when they don't accept it, we still use the cabinet. I still make referrals to the cabinet. I still work with the cabinet. I actually respond with the cabinet and do part of the interviews with them. So I coordinate with their services, but something at the cabinet that I found was my caseloads for the month was 100 plus. And so as a cabinet worker, I was kind of doing the same thing the officers was. I would respond, I would write up a safety plan, try to get that immediate need met, and then I'd walk out and not be able to do follow-up because I had a next case in line. So I was going and putting a Band-Aid on a case and moving to the next case, unfortunately. And so something that, you know, I learned very quickly with social work is, like he said, you can't just hand a family a resource list and say, here, call all these people, and hopefully you can find what you need, and to be redirected to somebody else, or to say we don't have any funds to help you, and all those things, where I do that for the family. So I make those initial contacts, partners, and able to build those relationships to kind of know. There's lots of community meetings that I attend, and so we know what funds are out there, who has what services available for families, and they're not put on a waiting list.
Okay. So if you saw evidence of dependency, neglect, or abuse, you would involve the cabinet, or?
Absolutely,
Okay.
yeah, and I actually help. So sometimes I did intake, and so I would screen reports at the cabinet to decide which ones met criteria. And sometimes it got a little tricky because, like, I was noticing officers would put, mom and dad walked in the house and they were smoking marijuana. Well, if you don't notify the cabinet that a child was present in the home,
Doesn't matter.
they don't get involved. And so helping the officers kind of reword their reports, their JC3s, is something that I also do. So I look at their report, and then if I feel that it's not going to meet the cabinet's criteria, I look and see, you know, how can we get them involved?
And if, say, for example, the cabinet were to file a DNA case, alleged, you know, dependency, neglect, or abuse, would you then work with the family after that's done to help coordinate services? Is that what you're doing, or what would your role be
Sometimes I
there?
do.
Okay.
If the cabinet's involved and they have a very active worker, I'll step away and let the cabinet handle that
But
case.
the follow-through is kind of weak sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. So it just kind of depends what the situation is. And then I also give that family my card. And if they're having trouble linking up with, let's say, North Cape for counseling, they'll contact me if they can't get hold of their social worker at the cabinet. So
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Your 9,000, we're probably double, 18.
Kathy, can you speak into the mic?
You're 9,000 and we're double that, and you're overwhelmed with that. I'm thinking that one person isn't enough, but my most concern is conceal and carry. How safe are you?
So I'm not a first responder.
Okay.
So the only time that I've responded to the scene is with another officer.
Okay.
If at any point, if it's a domestic violence case or something that I'm uncomfortable with, I have the availability to take an officer with me. Working at the cabinet, I mean, I've removed children out of homes daily, and so nothing scares me, to be honest. I, have a lot of safety training where I don't put myself in that situation. If I feel like it's escalating into a hostile environment, I immediately leave. And I carry a radio, and I have a little button on the radio that if I press it, they'll be there. In fact, the first time I went out on my own, at the cabinet, we just signed out. We could sign out for 6 home visits for the day, and we would show up the next day ready to work, and no one really ever checked on us. So I wasn't really paying attention to my portable radio, and I called out to let them know I was going to this house, and I went in, and it was an investigation of sexual abuse. So the cabinet worker responded with me, but was very new and asked me to perform the interviews with the victims. And so, I'm talking with the victims and not hearing the radio saying 7:30 status check, 7:30 status check, and next thing I know, there's officers at the door calling my cell phone, what's going on, are you okay? So I never had any issues. I feel very safe. I know if I hit the button, they'll be there instant. And anytime they hear me respond out on a call on a radio, they're constantly in that area to make sure that things are okay.
Okay, all right.
Go ahead, Patty.
Are you talking to me? I was going to say her.
God bless you.
I know, I don't know how
Thank you.
God bless you.
Well, I will say that's probably more true than you realize, because we had a 12-year-old that was killed in an auto accident. It was on his bicycle, and he was dying in the officer's arms. And the officer didn't realize that until, of course, we got word from the fire department that he actually did pass away at the hospital. And when they were reviewing the body-worn camera video, that's when she could see the life draining out of this 12-year-old little boy. She had a really hard time with it and spent an hour and a half in the kitchen with Kelly talking about it. And so there was somebody there immediate that understood what she was going through and helped work that officer through it. It just happened to be a female officer, and so she has been invaluable in that. And I'll give you just one other quick, because I know time is of an essence, but there was a recent older gentleman in the community that Kelly got a call from the fire department, from the medics that had been there, and this gentleman would constantly refuse to go to the hospital. He was dying from cancer, and he wanted to die at home. But he was in severe pain, and his wife was suffering from mild stages of dementia. And so there was a whole bunch of issues there. And the fire department called Kelly. Kelly went down there. Long story, she did talk them into going to the hospital. The doctors at the ER said if he had not come that moment, within 2 hours, he would have died in severe pain. As it was, they ended up, Kelly helped the wife, and he worked through the problem, and he did go to hospice, and he died a day or two later. But the point being is this man died with dignity, and he died without pain. And so you can't put a price on that. And that was our city and our employee that helped that family. And so for that family, they are forever and eternally grateful for the work that she did, because the paramedics just couldn't convince them to go. And it's not because we don't have good paramedics, because we do. Certainly if they told me to go, they wouldn't ask, they just take me. So, but that's an example of what she's able to do for our community. And it's locally, and when we talk about even disasters, locally we have to be prepared to take care of our own people. We can't rely on the state all the time. We certainly can't rely on the federal government much. So this is a way that we're taking care of people in our community every single day. And that has value.
Great point. Go ahead, Renee.
This is going to sound off the wall, but it's just coming from me. Have you noticed any increase in morale in your city?
I have seen an increase in morale within the police department and the fire department, because they now have somebody that they can refer to when they're on a scene that they don't have a clue what to do here. They can call Kelly, and Kelly, if she doesn't respond to everything, but she talks to them on the phone, and she gets the right information, and then she follows up with the family the next day or whenever is appropriate to do so. What I have seen is we have residents now coming to the PD asking to speak to Kelly and not to an officer. And that's when I realized, goodness, we are making an impact. If the community is coming to speak directly to her and not a police officer who would probably just take a report and pass it on and really can't help, she can. So if that's a measure of morale, I would say it probably could be considered so.
Okay, thank you.
Kudos to you two.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
What do you wear when you go to these people's homes? Communicate with the police, does that cause them any, you're with the police?
No, not as of yet. I can't.
She doesn't have one of these, so she doesn't wear a traditional police uniform, but she is representing the department and the city, and that's what's important, so. And she has her discretion if she needs not to wear that for whatever reason.
Yeah, there's times, so we have an Angel program out in Alexandria that focuses just on substance abuse. And so there's times that when I'm responding to an overdose, like the following day or 2 days later to a family, there's times that I won't wear, the shirt, but I'll just wear regular clothes. But I always identify that I'm still with the police department.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much.
That's awesome.
I just want to say how appreciative we are to Alexandria. They have been so gracious. They've offered all of their procedures and policy documents, their job description. We're not having to reinvent the wheel here. So with Matt Kramer and Chief Brendel, they've been able to already create the job description. This is really in the works, and it's from all the work that Alexandria has put together, and we are so grateful. We also have another partnership with Northern Kentucky University, Dr. Tara Mcclendon. She is the program director for the social work, and we met with her today. She is willing to assist us in the hiring process, going through the applications and sitting in the interviews with us, and to help us choose the right candidate for this position. And I know Kelly has also offered her assistance in the interview process, which is going to be huge because they're the experts. So we need to really pay attention to what they're saying and listen to their advice. I think Chief Brendel is going to come up and talk about a little bit how we're going to implement this here in Erlanger.
And while he's coming up, I wanted to, between what Jessica was just saying, the partnership with NKU, and your question, Kathy, about being overwhelmed, NKU is looking for places to put interns, and I believe Alexandria is working with interns right now, and we would anticipate doing the same type of thing. This would be a great opportunity for NKU, and it's also a great opportunity for us.
Hello. I was looking around while Kelly and Chief Ward were talking, and I saw a lot of faces that looked like mine when Sergeant Rice came to my office probably 3 weeks ago and said, "Hey, I'd like to do this police social worker." I'm like, "What?" And then he starts explaining what Chief Ward and them are doing in Alexandria, and I'm like, he kind of looked at me like I didn't believe him and I wasn't involved, and I'm like, "Man, I'm all in. Let's go. This is a great program. You guys, we want to be in part of the community." Kelly has shown it's been a dramatic decrease in reoccurring calls in Alexandria. We need that here. I think it's just a huge benefit to the city. Pay, we've already figured out that we have money in our budget to pay this position. We have an office in our building for this person, and we have a car available January 1st for this person. So we're ready to go. Really love your support for this. These people have done a lot of work. Just a valuable asset, I think, that would benefit Erlanger fully, and we need to jump on board and follow Chief Ward's lead here, because I'm amazed. I've never heard of this thing. Mr. Kramer had, though, told me after the fact. So that's a great thing, and I just want you guys to be a part of this. And, you know, I know we had some, when Ms. Fetty brought this up about a month ago or 3 weeks ago or whatever, last meeting, it's completely different than what she was kind of referring to that night as how she described it. And I think this is full circle and nothing but an upside for us. And I think we should go ahead and move forward and have your support to do that. Oh, I'm sorry.
I kind of mentioned this and Kathy did too. We are double Alexandria, and I know interns would help. I really honestly think we need 2.
Tell the mayor, I'm ready.
I mean,
We'll take them.
honestly, I'm just saying, she's
I
overwhelmed.
agree with you.
She's overwhelmed with 9,000, and we're even more urban. And we have, what, 19,000 residents?
We do.
And I think if you hire one, even with interns that are going to be changing out every 6 months or whatever, that person's going to lose their mind. It's just too much with this many people for one person. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, you know, I would certainly like to ease into those waters. But right now, we have a great opportunity. I mean, you talk about making lemonade out of lemons. I mean, essentially, the budget's opened up to be able to provide for this position because of what's going on with Cold Spring, or excuse me, not Cold Spring, Crescent Springs. We've got the money there for another position. We'll have to budget for it next year, you know, and so if adding another one to that, and we'll have a little bit of time under our belt to see and to feel how that's working and the success of it. That's what I would recommend. We start with one.
Mr. Blankenship.
Yeah, what compensation are you looking at for this position?
I'm sorry.
What compensation are you looking at for the position?
It would be the same as a starting officer, right?
Yeah.
Which is,
And what we're looking to hire is a master's level position. That way we can intern masters and bachelors, so that's kind of reflected in the pay.
Yeah, what is that, though? What would that be?
Be around 40,000.
Okay, that's, I want to make sure.
Right.
Thanks.
So do you plan on utilizing the existing pay scale, or would we create a new person in a new?
Chief Ward went, and correct me if I'm wrong, went on the patrolman salary band, and a new patrolman, is that correct? Correct. And we think that's a good idea. We've discussed, do they come in as a recruit? Because, you know, in a police department, a recruit gets this much, goes to academy 6 months later and gets a bump up of a few $1,000, and then a year after that to go up another $4,000. So do we start at that bottom level, or do we start in the middle? That's what some of the discussions have been over the last few days, and that'll be.
Yeah, we can deal with that internally whether we amend the pay classification plan.
I don't think.
Would be a new position, though.
Okay,
We have a job
so we
description,
definitely
but-
need to then create a municipal order for the position.
that's what I was going to ask. How hard would it be to create a new position and a new band?
Not hard at all. We just have to do it by ordinance and municipal order.
Okay.
I'm good with that. Yes, ma'am.
I would definitely agree with you that you don't want to try to squeeze this into an existing position like a starting police officer. It's just too unique. You definitely need a particular job description for this particular person with a separate pay grade.
And that is what was done in Alexandria. You guys did it by ordinance?
We did it by ordinance. And, we kind of looked at the states, they pay social workers in the cabinet. They start out a bachelor's level social worker at 28,000.
It's terrible, yeah.
38,000 at the master's level, is that correct? Right around there, start about 38. So we wanted to be a little bit more than that, but we didn't want to. We need to get one person in there, get them going, and get the program on its feet first.
And keep them.
Yeah. We
Whomever you hire to start the position is going to have their work cut out for them for about 6 months. Just getting things before they can really start getting to be overall effective. Kelly's just now getting to the point where she's getting not overwhelmed. It's feast or famine, just like it is with the police and fire. We're all feast or famine. And we're actually discussing future budgets of adding someone too. So, but we had to start somewhere.
Sure, yeah.
And we have good benefits to go along with that salary plus a car. So that would be a benefit to them. Yes, sir.
Would the person who would be in this position have just a bachelor's and master's of social work, or is there a special concentration for police social work?
Masters of social work,
Okay,
correct?
it is a social work?
Masters of social work.
Okay. Okay, so is there a special training or concentration to do the police side of this, or how's that work?
I might have to refer to Miss Kelly over here. Yeah, please.
And the simple answer to that is no.
Okay.
There is training for the master's level from the university's perspective.
Right.
And they do a great job. But there was a lot of on-the-job training with, working with the officers. We have been partnering with DOCJT, the Police Academy, and Kelly has been to a couple of 40-hour courses. I think one was child sexual abuse, where, not that she has investigated that from the cabinet's perspective, but it was the first time, and I'm going to speak for you here, correct me if I'm wrong, that she ever heard it from the law enforcement side of the fence. So there are classes that we're trying to get them down to. The problem is she's one.
Right.
If we have two, and eventually 3 or 4, now as a region, we can hammer on the academy to start opening things up and developing and kind of working with us as chiefs to get our folks trained, because they are within the police department, if that makes.
It does. That's why I was asking, is this is social work, but seems different to your typical social work, so that's why I was kind of worried, wondering how they did that.
And the key is finding the right social worker.
Yeah.
And that was what was difficult for me to understand at first. I get it now, because not all social workers could be a police social worker. It takes somebody that is almost a special person, and as long as you don't steal my social worker, we'll help you all we can.
Ms. Kyle?
I was just going to say, I really appreciate all your input, and I am just really thrilled about this whole idea. But I do think we need to go slow and start out with one, and then as it progresses, I can see this being a growing program, because there is such a great need, and anybody that's ever worked in any of our schools has firsthand experience with that. I mean, right there, and that's only one section of our community is the school, and you can see there's really a need for this. So I am all on board with this, but I think we should start with one and then grow the program as we go.
I'm fine with that.
But it's awesome. I mean, thank you for coming. That really helps us a lot.
I know your fire chief, he spent a day with Kelly and got to see exactly what she did. So.
I want to say that if we do hire 2, can the other one be a fire EMS social? I think we're getting gypped on this. Seriously. We did spend time with Kelly. Rhonda and I spent 5 hours with her, and from possible elderly abuse to senior citizen with some mental disabilities to an opiate addictive patient. And what's amazing, and I see you're trying to correlate this The thing that she was able to do, the family that came in for the young man that was on heroin, and she allowed us to sit in and watch this turmoil, they had been told 2 months before they